Good evening from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you, Chris. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon to join our insight sharing and share your inspiring life stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. It is absolutely my pleasure. I exist to help people make the best of their lives. So, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to share some thinking and some experience that I hope will help people make the best of their lives and improve their personal and professional performance.
Beautiful. And since you haven't been to our country for a while, let's make it a plan. So I hope to see you in person here one day, okay?
That would be wonderful. Yes, I look forward to coming back. I had the most amazing time when I visited Vietnam.
Absolutely. And since you've been here, you know our culture in here is a very honored to have you to share a little bit about who you are and the work you are doing now for our audience. Would you please do that honor for us?
Okay, so I guess I'm probably the luckiest person to be alive you're likely to meet. I was recently interviewed by a psychologist who studies survival situations, and he said that I should be dead at least 15 times. So from that, I've worked out, be very careful who you listen to.
Chris, help us to explain a little more about that, would you?
Okay, so I grew up in the countryside. I grew up I guess I had a fairly tough upbringing. I went to 6 different schools because we moved a lot, but my background and my family were farmers, and that was something I wanted to do. Um, a lot of people like me who later became army officers in the British Army are perceived to be rich, and this is simply not true. I grew up in a very poor family. I worked very hard. By the age of 21, I'd achieved my life's ambition. I was in a farming partnership, and my business partner had the most amazing attitude to work. So here's a question for everyone who is kind enough to join us. What do you think a healthy attitude to work and life is? What is a healthy attitude to work and life? And his was brilliant. He said, look, because we wake up, we have to be healthy. We have to be strong. We can never be sick. We can never be injured because we have to milk the cows twice a day, 7 days a week. So sometimes in life, having to can be a good thing. So here's another question for people. What are the have-tos that we can find in our lives? What are the things that we have to do? And then let's think about how we enjoy them and make the best of them and thrive. So his view was, look, we get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to milk the cows. We're here 7 days a week. Every second of sleep counts. So when we get up at 4 o'clock, the first thing you've got to do is keep your head in the right place. And I think that's wonderful advice. What can you do to get your head in the right place when you start your day? And how do you then keep it there? And I do a lot of workshops on helping people do that. His philosophy was wonderful. He said, look, let's always look at new and better ways of doing things. We will embrace new technology. We will always ask the question, are we doing this the best way that we can? Or it's not just about doing things right, it's about doing the right things. Where should our priorities be in life? Where is most important to us right now? And unfortunately, there was just one piece of the jigsaw that he missed, and that was focusing on his long-term health. And he wore out his knees and hips. And by his mid-50s, he was unable to really work physically hard because his knees and hips had gone. And so I worried about this for months because there was no way he was ever going to quit. But I guess what I learned is at a very young age, there is a time to change. And we are all a work in progress. Water finds its own level. Things are constantly changing, and we need to keep up so we don't get left behind. And I said to him one morning, I said, look, we should sell up. You should enjoy your money, and without the pressure of me buying you out, you can go and enjoy your life. And once I'd faced that difficult issue, it was as if the weight of the world had been taken off my shoulders. He actually said, you know, you're right. And I went off to do something entirely different. And my father and grandfather were soldiers, but they taught me something about human nature. Um, so what is the mark of the individual? What do you think the mark of the individual is? What I believe is that the mark of the individual is not what they do, it's what they would do if they didn't think they would be found out. Because it's what we do when we don't think people are looking that really counts. Because that is the mark of our integrity. And we are who we choose to be. I chose to be a military police officer, stopping people doing bad things in times of conflict. Ordinary people will do the most terrible things unless they're held accountable. And so I decided to be a military police officer. So I was commissioner of the military police. I did 3 years on counter-terrorist operations, stopping people being blown up. That was something I wanted to continue. And so I left and I went to work for a charity clearing landmines. And I was really good at it because I found exactly what we were looking for. I got blown up doing the least dangerous thing I ever did. I was walking in a safe area where all the landmines had been removed. But there was one landmine it was not possible for them to locate. And I was incredibly lucky to survive. I treated myself in that minefield. That was the reason I survived. We had very good medical training. I was taken down to South Africa. When I was stabilized in East Africa, in Mozambique, in the hospital, the surgeon phoned the charity that I work for and said, look, I'm very sorry, there's no point in flying him out because he's lost so much blood. He will be dead in less than an hour. But I managed to keep on breathing for another 14 hours. And I survived because I was fit. I worked really hard at my fitness. I got my head in the right place. And I focused on my reasons for living. Reasons are psychological rocket fuel. The more reasons we can find for doing what we do, the happier we will be, the healthier we will be, the more committed we will be. Find your reasons. I did not want to die because I knew it would destroy my parents' life. I didn't want to die because I knew it would leave a gap in my goddaughter's life, my niece's life. But also, most importantly, I passionately believed in what I was doing, clearing landmines and protecting innocent people. And so I couldn't die because I knew it would be really bad for funding for my program. So I had to live. I was told I'd be in hospital for about 6 months in South Africa. I was actually there for 3.5 weeks because I worked really hard at healing. And then I came back to the UK. I decided when I was in intensive care on day 2 that I would do the London Marathon less than a year after leaving hospital. And I had no idea how difficult that would be. And people said, someone like you can't do that. But I'm pleased to say I did it. And I finished the London Marathon less than a year after leaving hospital. That year was a big year for me. I did a master's degree in human behavior. And I got very involved in the campaign to ban landmines because I think it's fundamentally wrong to have a weapon that has a long-term effect on the civil population. And then I was asked to tell my story. But also I became the world's first amputee ultra-distance runner. When I did a race called the Marathon des Sables, and they said, look, you know, I'm sorry, but an amputee, someone like you can't do this. And what are the biggest limits in life? They're not out here. It is what goes on here. So I found a way. and I became the world's first amputee ultra distance runner. I have done many of the world's toughest ultra marathons. My favorite race title is the Badwater Death Valley Ultra 135-mile fun run, which takes place. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, the fun bit is finishing, by the way. It takes place in the hottest place on earth at the hottest time of year. So I've done loads of these races. So what I can do is I can share experience here on the limit of human endurance and on the balance of life and death. And an experience I was even more lucky to survive than being blown up was when I was taken prisoner by Khmer Rouge guerrillas in Cambodia. And coming from Vietnam, I guess you'll understand the history of the Khmer Rouge and just how brutal they were. Their prisoner handling consisted of interrogation, torture, and execution. And I managed to persuade them to not execute myself and my 2 Cambodian colleagues. And when we got back to the village where we were originally taken 3 days later, we walked back through mined and patrolled jungle. The Khmer Rouge commander who released us said that we had to avoid the patrols because they had orders to shoot anybody they found in the forest. So we managed to avoid them all. We got back to the village. And because the local people believe that ghosts come out of the forest at night, and they had been told I would be executed, they all believed I was a ghost and ran away from me. And eventually I managed to catch the village chief and breathe on him, and he finally believed that I was alive when I held on to him. And so I have lots of these experiences on the balance of life and death and limit of human endurance that I can share to demonstrate principles we can use in our daily lives to do what we do better and to be more resilient, but most importantly, to rise above the things that drag us down, because that is our challenge in life, to rise above the things that drag us down.
Wow, wow. Chris, thanks for sharing the highlights of your life in this conversation. Allow me to bring you travel time with you. Okay, so this conversation is designed to travel in time. And so when you were little, what was your dream about the works that Chris Moon's going to do in the future?
As a child, I guess I wanted to do something useful. I grew up in the countryside. I love nature. I love being with animals. I love being in the countryside. So that was very much part of my upbringing. And I, from a very young age, was growing things in the garden, growing vegetables. I always wanted to do something useful, something where I would help people. And I wasn't quite sure what that was. Initially, I thought growing food was a really good thing to do. And then I decided that actually being an army officer, holding people to account in times of war, that was a very important thing to do. So those were always things that I thought about from a young age. And I always wanted to know the reason why. Even from a very young age, my journey through life was the pursuit of wisdom, to gain wisdom, to understand more about our world, people, how we behave, and how we can do better, how we can do more.
Why is that question of understanding what wisdom is and how do you gain wisdom? How do we gain wisdom in life? Why is that matter? That question bothering you when you were young? While you can have so many other things for you to think on and do, Chris?
That to me was always really important. I guess perhaps from a very young age, I wanted to understand more about our world. I wanted to understand why people did what they did. I wanted to understand and make sense of people's reasons and the world itself, and why some people could be in one situation and react totally different to somebody else in the same situation. And I've realized it's choice. So from a very young age, I had a real desire to pursue wisdom, which I still have to this day.
Was there anybody at the family influence you or being a role model for you in that path?
Well, certainly my aunt she was a remarkable character. And she had a disease called polio, so she needed a caliper to walk. So she was a bit limited in what she could do. But she was a remarkable character. And I think that she had that attitude to life. Let's understand more. Let's do what we can to help people make the best of their lives. And if we can do something that will help somebody else, that will add value and meaning to our own existence. So she was a tremendous role model. And the way that she lived her life, overcoming her own disability, was a tremendous example to us all.
Wow. Chris, if you want to make sense of the world, right, you can choose to become a psychologist, endurance psychologist, or anything like that. But you chose to be serving in the army, in the British Army. Why did you choose that?
Because I believe that all it needs for evil to triumph is good people to do nothing. We have to be strong enough to stand up to what is wrong. And certainly what I did in the army, in the counter-terrorist role I was in, was about stopping people being blown up. So for me, it was very much a question of, actually, I get the concept of why we need to be strong to stop acts of terrorism. I also think it's really important to put into context man's inhumanity to man. And I despair when I look at the world around us. And it feels certainly at the moment as if the world is going backwards in terms of our humanity. Einstein said something which I find fascinating. He said, look, our technology has advanced faster than our humanity. And what we should be doing in the 21st century is finding ways to make our humanity catch up. And perhaps one day I would hope that humankind will come to realize our greatest enemy is not another nationality, creed, race, religion, or ideology. It is simply the violence itself, because violence breeds violence.
Wow. Wow. We're going to get to that at a later point in time in this conversation when we want to pick your brain on the topic of wisdom. Okay, I want to carry you unto the moment that you left the military and you decided to continue on the charity activities on clearing the landmines. So were you afraid when you go when you decided to to travel into Africa and Asia onto the one world out there and clear the landmine?
No.
No. Okay.
Because
so what was the idea?
Say again?
Yes, you were saying because. I want to hear continue, please.
Okay, because I looked at the risks and I thought I could manage them. I'd had a lot of operational experience by then, and I was confident that whatever I came across, I would deal with. In no way was I reckless, but I was very aware of the risks. And of course, back then, it was a very different time. Now, mine clearance technology has improved, so that process itself is much safer. But, still then, I was quite prepared to take those risks because I knew that I could manage them. But also, if you didn't, then those people would never get help.
Wow. Wow. So you took on that on personal journey to go there, right? And you said that you self-heal yourself, when you got the accident. Okay. How could you do that under crisis like this, Chris?
I still remember being blown up in the present tense because it was so extreme. I was walking back up a safe area where the landmines had been removed. Just before it happened, something felt wrong. It felt as if something violent, evil was coming towards me. I turned round, I took 3 paces, and then I heard the loudest bang I've ever heard. And I was blown up by a device that the deminers could not locate. I remember very, very clearly this feeling of horror before it happened. I still think to this day, had I not moved, something far worse would have happened.
Wow.
But I could feel it coming. Took 3 paces, loudest bang I've ever heard, lying on the ground. I had a visor on and ballistic glasses under my visor.
Wow.
So I knew that, I knew that my eyes were okay. And then a split second later, I thought, yep, something terrible has happened. You need to face reality. Be totally realistic. You need to work out what's happened.
And you
So I
say,
looked down. Yeah, go
sorry?
ahead.
You say, yeah, please continue. Sorry, I interrupted. Yes.
No problem. So I looked down. I saw my first thing I did was think, right, what is the worst case scenario? And I thought, right, okay, worst case scenario is both legs blown off, both arms blown off. I will be a torso taking my last breath. So I took a breath, prepared myself, looked down, lower left arm still there, burned and bleeding, lower left leg still there, burned and bleeding, lower right leg completely blown off, lower right arm indescribable mess. But already this is not as bad as it could be.
Wow. How could it not as bad as it could be? So what could get worse?
Oh, much worse would have been all my limbs blown off. Much worse would have been I would be blind. I would not be able to see.
Wow. So you say the doctor said that you're not going to survive in an hour time, but you kept on breathing and breathing for 14 hours, right? And you mentioned about the word reason. So you had a reason for you to survive. Okay. Bring us to that moment, please.
I remember fading in and out of consciousness when I was taken to the hospital. And I wouldn't allow them to give me morphine in the minefield because I knew I needed to stay alert. So I took the pain. Sometimes in life, you've got to take the pain. And then I remember going into the operating theatre. I faded in and out a little bit of consciousness afterwards. And there was only one thought in my mind. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And that was the only thought that I allowed in my mind, that I'm going to make it. And that belief was a choice. Our beliefs are a choice. And I chose to believe that I would make it. And I still think that is the most important thing that led to me making it.
So from that choice, you make bigger choices after that. Not only surviving, you are recovering in less than 2 months. And after recovering, you attended, you ran the London Marathon, right? And at the same time, you study for your master degree also. Where did you come up with that idea, Chris?
Well, I think it was day 2 when I was in intensive care that I decided to do the marathon less than a year after leaving hospital. And I didn't know how difficult it would be then, but I told this nurse, and I said, I'm going to do the London Marathon less than a year after leaving hospital. I'm going to get my place booked. And then a few hours later, they sent a psychiatrist to come and talk to me.
Because?
Well, I think because they thought I hadn't come to terms with what had happened to me, but I had. I was totally realistic. And he spoke to me a few times, and then he phoned my mother. He said to her, he said, look, Mrs. Moon, I just wanted to let you know, I've never seen anything quite like it. Your son has completely accepted what's happened to him. He's recognized that he needs to change his thinking. And I wanted to let you know that he is as sane as I am. At which point my mother said, if my son is as sane as a psychiatrist, I'm extremely worried.
Oh, why?
Well, I think she thinks that all psychiatrists are a bit strange.
Well, So what did you do for that 1 year, less than a year to do to make yourself be capable and able to do
Yeah,
that?
well, the big thing was to get the artificial leg. That was the biggest challenge, getting an artificial leg to be able to run on. And I did get one. I only had 3 weeks in which I could do distance training, but yeah, I got round.
Wow. Wow. And then after that, not only the London Marathon, you took on the ultra marathon, also the first amputee ultra marathon racer also, right? Okay. So it
Yes, it
took to
was.
another level of the test of physical endurance for you. Why did you decide to go into that next level?
Because life is about making the best of it. And maybe the question we should ask is not who we are, but what could we be and what should we be? And I think you've got to squeeze all the juice out of life. So for me, that was what it was about. It was about making the best of life.
Hmm. And moving on to speaking and and helping people to be inspiring. How did that happen along the way?
Well, I when I did that first marathon, it was on the news, on
Hmm.
the British TV news, and I was phoned up and somebody said, "Will you please come and talk to our company and talk to us about your story, about how you overcame being a prisoner of the Khmer Rouge, how you then cleared landmines for 2 years, and then you were blown up doing the least dangerous thing you ever did, walking in a safe area. So tell us about how you trained yourself to do a marathon less than a year after leaving hospital. And also, we want to know how you survived as a prisoner of the Khmer Rouge." So that was how I started talking.
Wow.
And, there's been an evolution. I have read hundreds of books on the process of achievement, on the psychology of achievement. And the good news is it is all common sense. The bad news is that common sense is not very common.
Wow. So how did you make common sense for yourself, then having other people to make common sense for themselves?
I think it's about actually having an experience where we examine our thinking.
Mm.
The most important psychological discovery ever is that we choose the way we think, and the way we think determines the way we feel. It does not always feel like it, and it's easy to say the way we think determines how we feel, but it is absolutely true.
Absolutely. So since you mentioned about the word wisdom earlier, right? We want, you have been many leaders, many managers, many people around the world to see to face with and to endure through challenges, to take on challenges on, right? So what is that wisdom? How is defined in your own definition, though?
I'm sorry, say that last bit again. You just cut out.
How do you define wisdom?
How do I define wisdom? I think wisdom is about seeking the truth, and it is about understanding what is going on. There are very few people who can be bothered to really put the effort in to know what is going on, and even fewer who understand it. And I think that that is what wisdom is about. It's about seeking the truth. It is about understanding the reality of our existence and our decisions. And it is about acceptance, having the acceptance to recognize that not everybody is going to be as committed or as determined to find what one believes is the truth. So we also need to remember that we, as human beings, will fit our version of the world to fit our beliefs. Let me give you an example. There
Please.
was a cult in America in the 1960s, and they said that the world will end on New Year's Eve this year. So December the 31st at midnight, the world will end. And they went around and they told everybody and they tried to convert people. And there was a small group of them of about 50. And they all were waiting for the world to end. And when it didn't, the leader of the cult said, no. You need to understand. Nothing's changed, but God's given us more time to find more people to join us. So he's given us a reprieve so we can find more time to get more people to join us. So more people will be saved. And as a result of that, their numbers quadrupled. And so the journalists thought this would be the end of the organization, but no, nothing could be further than the truth. They become bigger and greater because people rationalized it, and it's called cognitive dissonance. So that, I think, is really important to understand.
Wow. Chris, my wife and I, we've been traveling the world. We've been interviewing amazing people to help us to understand and our audience to understand the secret behind how to expand our ability to think, because we believe that our thinking capability has been diminishing for so many reasons, right? So for you, you have a very unique perspective on thinking, on accumulating wisdom. How have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
One of the things that helps me is that I live quite remotely in Scotland. So I live out in the countryside, so I can make space to think. I have 3 dogs, so I walk with my dogs. And what I do when I walk with my dogs is I think. And I think about constructive things. So here is a question. How do we solve our problems in life? And the answer is by asking constructive questions.
To last question for this conversation for today, so that you can take some rest after this, okay? The first question is, you mentioned about reason is the choice, okay? And a lot of us living out there don't have that choice, don't exercise that choice, or don't have a reason for our existence, right? So Chris, what can we do to build that reasons for our existence, build a reason that's big enough for us?
Okay. I think for all of us, one of the most important things to do is to identify what life is about. What is our meaning? What is our purpose? And I've written a short piece on this, and I'll send you the link on LinkedIn when I post it. But
Please.
I talk about, for all of us, it is about finding purpose and meaning. For each of us, that will be different. But ultimately, every philosophy, every creed, every religion has at its core a true value for human relationships. Life is about loving and being loved. And I think that that's a very important part of our reasons for living. And I think another part is to do whatever we do with purpose, to identify our purpose, how we can impact positively on others, because I don't believe it's having things that makes people truly happy. I think it's doing things. So if we are committed to live the best life that we can live and to saying, how do I make the best of this? Well, then I think that that will start to happen.
Beautiful. The last question is us to travel time one more time, okay? So because your aunt was the person that have a huge influence on your life, right? So you travel time together with me and had a chance to talk to your aunt, all right? And you tell her about the journey of Chris Moon in the future of influencing and motivating people. What stories you gonna tell her?
I think she would just be interested. And one of the things that's really wonderful is I had the opportunity to speak to her and tell her face to face what I learned. And one of the big things I learned when I was a prisoner of the Khmer Rouge, and there were 7 times when they talked about executing us, on each occasion, it was possible to change the way they felt. And I think that's really important to understand. how do we make other people feel? How do we want to make them feel? I spoke at a business conference some years ago with President Bill Clinton. At the end of the conference, he came out and we were standing together, and there were 8 cars to take the speakers back to the hotel. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Excuse me, Chris, I'll be right back." So he walked off and he went to every chauffeur, every driver of those cars, and there were 8 of them. He shook their hand and he said, "Hi, I'm Bill Clinton. Great to meet you. Thank you for doing what you do. How's your day?" I watched each of those drivers get into their car, visibly 2 inches taller, with a huge smile on their face, feeling great about what they did. I wish you could have seen it, but they had huge smiles. You could see they felt great about what they did. So here's the question. People will not remember what we say or what we do, but they will always remember how we make them feel. So how do you want to make people feel?
Wow, wow. I will always remember this conversation, Chris, because it makes me feel very, very, very honored to have the privilege to have a conversation with you today. And having the inspiring story that you share, the beautiful wisdom that you brought to the program. I believe that our audience will have so much to learn from this conversation. So hope one day we're going to meet in Asia.
I have no doubt that I'm sure we will meet one day in Asia, and I very much look forward to that and having a cup of tea with you. And also, the thing I would say is, look, the great thing in life is to keep on keeping on. Persistence is the material of success. Squeeze all the juice out of life. And if we can spread a little sunshine and kindness into somebody else's life, that is surely the most important thing we can do, because it will be reflected back in far greater quantity. Unless, of course, you're next to a psychopath, in which case move.
I'm not.
Now, I'm going to leave you with one last thought.
Please.
And that is the power of the smile. You have a great smile. And there's some research done in the US into people. So I, as you know, have studied human behavior. And this is a great study. They looked at college football photographs from the 1910s and 20s, and they looked to see when people died. And on average, the people smiling and laughing in the photographs were living 7 to 10 years longer. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
And if you think about it, a smile is infectious. People who smile are thought to be more capable, more competent, more professional, more trustworthy, and more likable and more attractive. So, on the count of 3, buddy, I want you to give me your best smile. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
My friend.
That is beautiful. Buddy, it is so important to smile, but not in a creepy way.
Yes, yes.
That was a joke, by the way. I'm not being serious.
I understand. Chris, you have a wonderful day, and we love you from Asia. We definitely will make a way to see you in person one day, okay?
Thank you. May you live your best life. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.